always and never. You always think about yourself. You never consider me. First of all, usually that's not accurate. It's probably more effective to say, right now, this is what I'm experiencing. Right now, this is what I'm perceiving. And again, this is where you can use your I statements. I feel that you are not present with me right now. So that's way better than saying you are never present with me. And again, these are like little ways that plant the seed for conflict, because people feel attacked when they hear always and never, because again, usually it's not accurate. And so you're going to pretty much create the space for defensiveness, because then they're going to swing back and correct you. And now whatever your intended message is has gone to the wayside, because you started off communication with an absolute statement and initiated somebody's defensiveness. So as much as you can, and I know it's so easy when we're angry, but try to stay away from always and never. Interrupting the speaker. So especially when we feel passionate, we can want to talk over people and not take the time to really slow down and listen to them. This goes back to what I was saying about how important active listening is. And so we really want to take the time to not interrupt, but to listen, and to, just like we want to be seen and heard and understood, to deliver that as well. You don't have a right to receive that which you are not giving. So if that's what you want, then you have to give it, and be respectful and present while somebody else is expressing their truth, their thoughts, their preferences. Assumptions. And so this kind of goes hand in hand with always and never, but this is where we make assumptions of a person, where we assume who they are, or we may take things from their past and then project it onto them in the present moment. And again, this tends to make people feel very defensive. As well as overgeneralization. So when we overgeneralize somebody's behaviors, and this is again under the limb of always and never, that style of thinking where we box somebody into a category and we communicate to them from that space, versus being present and authentic in terms of what our needs and feelings are. Another communication pitfall is neglecting nonverbal cues. So maybe you're expressing something and you're not being present to the fact that this person is no longer making eye contact, they're looking away, they're picking at their nails. All of these are little signs of maybe they're frustrated, maybe they're distracted, maybe something is happening inside of them. Again, as I spoke about earlier, nonverbal cues are very telling. So if you want to be a good communicator, you have to also be aware and perceptive of other people's nonverbal cues so that you can check in. So for instance, maybe I'm expressing a difficult truth to somebody and I notice that they're looking away. I may say, I perceive that you're a bit distracted right now and I'm wanting your presence. And then that may pull them in, and maybe that's where they have the courage to say, well, yeah, I actually completely disagree with you. So being able to spot and actually name the nonverbal cues that you're seeing in another person versus just rambling on and on and on and not being attuned is another way of being a good communicator. So be aware of other people's nonverbal cues. Look at their body language, look at their eyes, look at it, they're picking up things or pulling at things, because all of that is telling you something, and that's a space for you to check in. Being defensive and overly emotional. And so as human beings, one of our downfalls is that we have this compulsive need to be right. Happy in a relationship, you have to choose. And so when you're communicating important truths with someone, or you're having an important confrontation, try not to be defensive, even if you feel like that person is wrong, and maybe they technically are. Being defensive is not an effective way to have your need met, because ultimately, I'm convinced of this, ultimately every human being desires to feel seen, heard, and understood, right? All of us have that desire. And by you being defensive and overly emotional, you're blocking that possibility from happening. So even if you feel wronged, even if you feel upset, even if you have a point, try to maintain your composure, not for them, but for you, for your needs to get met. And so remember, by staying composed, even if you're in the face of somebody who is objectively wrong, it is still in service to you, because you are now creating this space to increase the chances, it's not guaranteed, but you increase the chances of being seen, heard, and understood when you are able to maintain your composure, maintain your dignity, and not become overly defensive or overly emotional. Another communication pitfall is an overload of information, which is kind of similar. I think this could go hand in hand a little bit with not being attuned to nonverbal cues, but sometimes I notice some people, they speak too much. They put too much information. They kind of ramble on and on and on, and they may have excellent points and are really great things to say, but if you overload somebody, you lose them. And also, if there is something important that you want to say, sometimes we can do this when we're emotional about something, where we can just like overflow with whatever information or whatever it is we want to say, and then we actually lose the potency of our message when we like kind of drown someone in our information versus engaging them, like saying your truth and then asking them their thoughts, asking them how they feel, asking for feedback. And so make sure that when you're conversing with somebody, be aware of ratio. You want to have as much as you can. I mean, unless you're like in a presenting role like me right now, but in day-to-day dialogue, you want to be aware of ratio. You want to be aware of like, this is like for my oversharers, what percentage am I sharing compared to them? And you want to like try and have an equal balance. And so if you know that you have a propensity to overshare or like overload on information, just be mindful of ratio. How much space are you taking up? And you can also bring somebody in, because sometimes people are a bit more introverted or quiet or withdrawn. And by asking questions or seeking their feedback, asking them what they think, that's how you can balance out the ratio. Yeah. Strategies for confrontation. Okay, so I actually love confrontations, and I know like that may be weird to hear, but after so much work on communications, I am convinced that I prefer the tension of a healthy confrontation over the tension of not speaking my truth any day. And that has taken so much time and practice in order for me to have this level of comfort where I do feel comfortable having uncomfortable conversations now. I do feel comfortable having confrontations. And that's not to say that it's not challenging. I still feel a bit scared every time I have a confrontation, but I have really learned that I value the peace that comes with expressing my truth over the like consistent discomfort of not saying the thing. And so just know that even though most people really will like unconsciously avoid confrontations at any cost, I want you to reflect on like how much that costs you to keep that inside, how much that costs the relationship to not express what is true for you, and that even though it may be tough in the moment, there's peace on the other side if you can have a conscious confrontation. If you can practice the things that we spoke about here, then you could be empowered to facilitate a positive confrontation and have a positive outcome. I say confrontations are like surgery, like nobody wants to do it. It doesn't feel good while you're in the process of it, but it is healing in the long run when done well. So here are some steps and strategies on how to empower yourself to feel more confident to have a crucial conversation or confrontation with someone. Get clear on how you feel and why. Because if you do not take the time to process and emotionally regulate before you have a confrontation, then you may just verbally dump everything onto them, and you may also just not be very effective and clear in terms of what your message is. So take time to reflect on what am I feeling and what do I need before you have the confrontation. List out the points that you want to communicate. This is going to help you to, like I said, not be overly emotional and to be concise in terms of what it is that you want to express, what's important for you to relate to the other person. Have the courage to express yourself. Like I said, really weigh out how much it costs you to not express the things that bother you, the things that hurt you, the things that don't sit right with you. Like really reflect on how much that is costing you and instead prioritize being authentic. That is what works for me. And so have the courage to express yourself. Have the courage to say the thing. Utilize I statements and paraphrasing. So again, I statements sound like I perceive, I feel, I need. We're staying away from accusing language like you are always, you are this, you should. We're going to reduce that and focus on expressing you, what is happening inside of you. And also paraphrasing, like I said, when somebody is sharing back their reflection to you, summarize what you heard. Usually the way that I do this is what I heard you say is, and then I will summarize in my own words what I understood, or what I think I'm getting about you is, and then I will summarize what I think I understood about their message. And again, they can clarify if I'm off the mark, or they can say yes, and then they feel that confirmation that I was being present with them. Make clear requests. So if you're going to have a confrontation, have an end goal in mind. Don't just go in there and express everything that's bothering you. Be clear in terms of like, well, what's the path forward? Obviously, this thing isn't working. What are your requests to have this work in the future? So really label out like, what are your requests from this experience? Check in with the other person. So again, even though you're having a confrontation with somebody, you can still have an alliance with them. So even if you're in a confrontation, you can still show dignity to the other person by asking them, what are your thoughts around what I said? What's coming up for you? What are you feeling? And again, this is really going to increase the chance that the outcome will be favorable to both of you. And lastly, align on a path forward. So after a confrontation, you want to come together. After you've expressed yourself, after you've made space for the other person to express themselves, you now want to align on what does moving forward look like? How are we going to reduce this from happening in the future? What do I need to do? What do you need to do? Do we both agree with the terms and conditions? And so you want to co-align a path forward in terms of how both of you see it fit to resolve this conflict. Yeah, next slide. Oh, that's it. Okay. And that wraps around communication. Of you leave feeling empowered and maybe even excited to have some difficult conversations and to express yourself, to express your truth, and know how to do it in a way that is respectful to yourself and respectful to others. It is possible with time and practice. And again, I'm coming from this message is again in alignment with New Creations. That's currently where I work. We have the phone number posted, 708-6565, and you can find us at 101 Circular Road, San Fernando for in-person sessions, and we also offer virtual sessions as well if you need support around communication. Thank you for your time. And if there are any questions or thoughts even, I'm open to them, and I would love to hear what you got from this, or like anywhere that you feel stuck. Are we complete?
Yeah, I think so.
Am I still live streamed? Oh, hi guys.
So guys, if you all have any questions, you all could put it on the chat. And yes, if you all have any questions, just put it on the chat and we'll be happy to answer. And by we, I mean Mr. Elsie.
Okay. Again, everybody, thank you so much for your time, and I'm wishing you a happy holiday tomorrow, and happy conversations and happy relationships. Have a good evening.